Hello, welcome to my channel, another bibliophile reads. My name is Greg, and I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, and the reread, my hits and misses for 2022. Call this a wrap-up of the books that I want to highlight. Now, in each category, I am going to list 5 books. I will rank them roughly in order from least favorite to most favorite, but don't hold me too closely to that. I could easily switch around a lot of these titles in place. This is just a rough approximation. So, for the good, let me say that I sometimes have trouble finding new books to read that I really love, especially contemporary books and books published recently. I just don't enjoy them as often as I do older books. But I do have 5 good books that were my first time reading these books this year. Now, except for one book on this list, all were published before 2022. Some of them a long time ago. But at number 5, The Empire of Pain, The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty by Patrick Radden Keefe. This is a work of nonfiction. It was my choice, top choice, for the BookTube Nonfiction Prize in the final round. It won the silver. It lost out to, I thought, an inferior book, but others people say differently. But this is a story of the Sackler family who created Oxycontin and how American government let this family basically run unregulated and created this devastating plague of addiction and only really took them to task at the very end. And it is an important history because rich people get to do what they want because they are rich and they don't usually have to pay the consequences for their misdeeds. And that's why this is an important book. The big thing about this is that I don't think I will ever reread this book. It's not that kind of book that you want to reread and visit, but the information in this book is devastating. It's just how we allowed this to happen. And maybe someday we will learn better. But that's number 5. Number 4, I Was Dora Suarez by Derek Raymond. This is a book I think was written late 70s, early 90s. It is about an unnamed police detective in London who comes across a horribly mutilated woman. And he has to discover who her murderer is. And he becomes deeply obsessed with the crimes committed against this woman. And the crimes committed against her are horrendous and disturbing. It is one of the most graphic novels in that way that I've read in a long time. And you will have to wonder how any one person could be that cruel to another and inflict such horrible damage and violence. And it is disturbing. And the detective, his obsession is also sort of disturbing, although understandable. At slot number 3, taking a completely turn away, is Gold by Rumi. This is a collection of poems by the Sufi poet Rumi. And they are absolutely delightful. Yes, they are supposed to be part of the Sufi religion, but you don't have to be religious to enjoy these poems. You get into the spirit. You can feel the benevolence of Rumi coming through. And these are newly translated editions of Rumi. There are some editions of Rumi that are published that are published by people who don't speak Farsi. They are poets rereading other translations and reinterpreting those translations into their own verse. But the translator of this verse, and I will leave her name in the comments below because I'm not going to get her name right. So I'll just leave it down below. Does speak Farsi fluently. She even sings these poems. You can find, I'll leave a link to her video channel where she sings Rumi in Farsi. And it is absolutely beautiful to listen to her voice, even though I don't speak a word of Farsi. Excellent poems. At slot number 2 is True Grit by Charles Portis. This is truly a surprise entry on this list. I was reading for June on the Range in 2022, and a few months before that, a commenter left a note saying I should check out the audio book of True Grit because the narrator, Donna Tartt, did such a fantastic job. And I have to say, Donna Tartt nailed the character of Maddie. I know I have mentioned this before in more than one video, but I was so delighted with her voice, her accent, and the book itself is a great Western. It is a good story, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm sure if you just read the story alone, it would also be equally as good. But I want to add just that special thumbs up for the audiobook narration by Donna Tartt. And in top place, number 1, for books that I have not read before, but read this year, is The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. Another book that I have mentioned more than once in different videos. This is, on the surface, the story of a young man who goes on a long weekend trip, no, a little more than a week, about 2 weeks, to a sanitarium to visit a friend, and winds up staying there for many years, ruminating on this supposed illness that he has and how he needs to seek a cure for illness. And this is all pre-World War I. And it is fascinating, it is dense, it is deep. When I read this, I only read the chapter. I did not try to dive into each chapter because Thomas Mann is so deep. You could read one chapter and study it for hours. You could write papers on what he is trying to say in these chapters, and it'd be endless amount of information because Thomas Mann was that deep writing this novel. And why it is not an easy book to read, it is a thoroughly enjoyable one. And as I said, I just read the book. I knew when reading this, I was missing a lot of the deeper detail, but I let that slide and just enjoyed picking up this book and reading it. And that's how I would suggest other people read this book, at least for the first time. This is definitely a book that I'm going to have to reread someday. Now we are on to the bad. These are the books that I did not enjoy so much in 2022. And the first one is a favorite of many booktubers, but it missed with me. And that is Persuasion by Jane Austen. I know she is a talented author. She is talented at creating characters with her word usage. However, the story just did not resonate with me. The characters did not resonate me. I could recognize that Jane Austen is a well-beloved author by many people, but I just did not give a flip about Anne marrying her sea captain. And I imagine that's going to hold true for all of Jane Austen's works. She is just not an author for me. At spot number 4 is The Summer Wind, the Lowcountry Summer Trilogy, Book 2 by Mary Alice Monroe. I read this book as part of my in-person book group. I did not know going in that it was the middle of a trilogy. I'm not sure that it matters. This book is a romance or women's fiction. It is a story of sisters going to an island. Is it North Carolina or South Carolina? One of the Carolinas. They're on an island and they're visiting their grandmother, who is going to be selling a well-beloved home on that island because she's running out of money. And again, because this is a romance, it just did not resonate with me. But unlike Jane Austen, Mary Alice Monroe, I don't really think she's a talented author. She's good at creating a best-selling story to be read by women on the beach. I have to imagine that very few men will ever read this book. Now, I may be mistaken in that. There are men who do like romances, and I'll let them like that. But for me, no. Was not interested in the plight of these sisters and their twisting love lives and the family drama that they had to endure, knowing that their mother is going to be selling this beloved home. Book number 3, Verity by Coleen Hoover. This was a free audiobook from Audible. It is, on the surface, a mystery novel. It concerns a woman, she's a mystery writer, who does not write best-selling books. But she is hired to become the pen name for a very famous mystery author who's had a bit of an accident and cannot complete a contract for a number of books in a series. And the problem with this book is it starts with a very bloody incident. And I guess I'm going to do a little bit of a spoiler, just a little bit of a spoiler. This bloody incident has no relation to the rest of the novel. None. It just happens. I kept waiting to see how the author would tie that incident back into the story. And she never does. And then there are some weird sexual quirks because this mystery writer has gone to the original writers, and I don't remember the names. She's gone to her home to review her documents with her husband who is living there, with her son that is living there. And the mystery author herself is in a coma upstairs. And the end of the book has something that shattered my willing suspension of disbelief. It has a person doing something that no person on this planet could ever achieve in the real world. And it just totally ludicrous that someone could write a story and have people believe that was true. So no, not so good. I know some people out there absolutely adore Coleen Hoover. This is probably my first and only book by her that I will ever read. At spot number 2, Nightmare in the Woods. One family's true, strange, and terrifying encounter with Bigfoot in the Northeastern United States by A.H. Verge. This is supposedly a work of nonfiction. It is fiction. I don't know what this author encountered in those woods. It wasn't Bigfoot. I will bet a box of donuts that Bigfoot doesn't exist. And either this author is just making it all up, he is hallucinating, or maybe he saw something in the woods, maybe a bear or something. But it was just ridiculous that someone could be writing a story as if Bigfoot were real. And worse, it was self-published. This author had minimum writing talents. No publisher would have touched this book because it just wasn't well written. And at number one for the books that I disliked is My Brilliant Life by Aaron Kim, a novel translated from the Korean. I read it as part of the BookTube Prize judging, and it is a story of a teenage boy with a very devastating disease, and he is taken care of by his parents. And it is essentially how much his parents love him and how much he loves his parents. It is melodramatic and it is sentimental as a Hallmark movie, and I could not stand it. I wanted to throw this book across the room, but I was reading it on my Paperwhite Kindle, so didn't want to damage my Kindle by throwing it across the room. Could not stand this book at all. And now for the rereads. I had so many great rereads this year. I read 25 of my 215 books were rereads. So it was really hard for me to pick out 5 rereads that I wanted to highlight. But I did because I want to limit it to 5. So these are all great because if you reread a book, you usually pick out the ones that you really like. And starting at number 5 is Mouse 1 and 2 by Art Spiegelman. I read this about 20 years ago. It is a graphic novel about Art Spiegelman's father and his experiences as a Jew in Poland as the Nazis were rising to power and then coming through Auschwitz. It is a devastatingly good book. I cannot recommend this enough. If you have not read Mouse 1 and 2, you really need to do so. And even the outer story of when his father was older and living in New York City and dealing with art, he was trying to get down his father's story to create this book. It's really good. It is just a magnificent graphic novel. At number 4 is a crime novel, an early one, The Postman Always Wings Twice by James M. Cain. And this is the story of a drifter in California in the 30s who comes upon a diner out in the middle of nowhere. And there is a beautiful woman behind the counter, but she's married to the owner of the diner, but she's not happily married. And she has the hots for the drifter, as the drifter has the hots for her. And they concoct a plan to murder the owner. And things don't go according to plan. And it is such a great early entry into the crime genre. Highly recommended. At spot number 3, The Man with the Golden Arm by Nelson Algren. This is the winner of the 1950 National Book Award. It is the story of a World War II veteran who was returned to the United States. And because he was wounded, he is addicted to morphine. And it is a story of his life trying to deal with how to get high and what you need to do. And it is just such a great piece. There are scenes where you can imagine the author sitting in a dive bar, listening to the lower ends of society, let us say, and their woes and their troubles, and just capturing their way of speech and the troubles that they experience. And it is just brilliantly put down on paper. And it reminds you, too, that drug addiction has always been a problem in the United States. Today, it's fentanyl. Back then, it was morphine. But the problems are still the same. And the lives of the addicts are still as desperate. And I'm not a drug addict, but I was there with these people. I felt their lives. I felt their desperation. And it is a really good novel. At number 2 is Blood Meridian, or The Evening Redness in the West by Cormac McCarthy. This is probably the fourth time I've read this book. And every time it's just an amazing experience. His descriptions are just so engaging. He takes you to the Old West. He puts you there. He brings these rampaging Native Americans coming at you with these weird headdresses of bones and whatever. And you were there. But this book is just so incredibly violent. It is possibly the most violent book I know. And it contains one of the really great characters. That is the judge. I don't know who the judge is. He could be many things. Is he a real person? Is he an incarnation of the spirit of war? Pure evil? I don't know. But he is a man you want to read about, but you'd never want to meet in real life. Of course, he's fictional, does not exist, but just the malevolence of this character is fabulous to read about. And the last one, my favorite reread of the year, is going to Geek Love by Catherine Dunn. This is a story, 50s, 60s, somewhere around there, of a traveling circus, a family-owned one. And their main attraction are freaks. And the mother and father made their own freaks. The mother ingested poisonous substances that would induce birth defects in her children. And the first one was Artie, the flipper boy. And that's when your arms and legs are basically flippers. And she has Siamese twins, a dwarf, and then there's Chick. I'll let you experience Chick for yourself. And it is just an amazing experience to see the story of this freak show and what goes on in this freak show. But what struck me most about this book, this is my third time reading it, somewhere around, maybe fourth, is the power of cults and what people will do to follow a cult leader or a charismatic leader. And that is Artie. And he starts his own truly devastating cult. And what he asks of his cult members, you would say no one in this world would ever actually do. But recent experiences on how people react to cult leaders and their willingness to follow a leader who is not doing things in their best interest is true to life. I don't know if there were a real writer, a real Artie asking people to do what he asks them to do, if people would really follow him. Part of me says, no, people are too sensible. Other part of me says, no, if he is a charismatic cult leader, they will follow him to the very end, the way people followed Jim Jones. And that is the Jonestown tragedy with Kool-Aid. So check out Geek Love if you haven't. And that are my good, bad, and reread of 2022. Thank you for watching. Keep on reading.